Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 224.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, and welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because you are going to hear from an incredible entrepreneur, but more importantly than just that, you're going to get a different perspective on cash flow than you may have gotten. No matter how many of the episodes you've listened to before, I think today is going to be one of those days where you want to replay this one over and over and over again, take some notes, and just understand that it's how you respond to things when you are afraid that makes all the difference. But most importantly, being resourceful is the key to making it work. Entrepreneurship is not a straight line straight to the top, and that's okay. It's not just you. And I think today's guest will be able to help you understand that, and not only understand that, but just the wide range of impact that you can have with your idea and going out there to make things happen. He's been called the Chief Happiness Officer. He's been called the Dean of Social Enterprise. He's also an entrepreneur in residence. He's a founder. He's a co-founder in other companies. He's speaker, workshop presenter, consultant, and mentor. He does a lot of things, but right now, what he's going to do is impart to you wisdom that will help you build your cash flow. Help me welcome Mike Brcic. Mike, you there?
I'm here. Looking forward to it, Jay.
I'm glad that you have managed to, tear yourself away from everything that you are doing. I thought I was busy, but you redefine it.
Yeah. There's a lot of things going on. I try to, I'm a really big stickler for productivity, time management, all that kind of stuff. I read up on that stuff. I try to get the most I can out of every hour of my day, and so far so good, managing it all.
This list of things, between all of the companies and the places that you help to grow, I'm just like, you not only look to get the most out of your time, but other people's too. So I'm like, man, this guy is good, and I definitely want to make sure that no matter what we talk about today, that we get an opportunity to talk about your newest project, The Social Entrepreneur. So make sure you remind me before we get too far into it. However, I've got to ask you the first question. I look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, Batman, Superman. Do they have superheroes in Canada?
We have Captain Canuck.
Captain Canuck. Okay. Hey, we got to start somewhere. And every superhero in some way, shape, or form uses their skill sets. They get dressed up just like entrepreneurs do. We get dressed up. They put on, masks and tights and capes and use their special skills to improve the quality of life of other individuals. And I think entrepreneurs do the exact same thing. Also, like superheroes are one day just normal people. They just got bit by a spider. Maybe they tripped over a rock, bumped their head, and forgot who they were, and invented a new person for themselves. And that's how things happened. And the same is true for entrepreneurs. Before you were the Chief Happiness Officer, which, by the way, I think is the favorite of all the titles you carry. I think that's probably my favorite one. Before you were Chief Happiness Officer, before you were out there digging into the lives of other entrepreneurs and pulling out their greatness and helping them show it, before you were doing the number one mountain bike tour company on earth, before all that, what we want to know is, who is Mike Brcic?
Wow, that's quite a interesting starting question. I'm trying to think how far I go back to answer that question.
Somewhere after conception, but before death.
Yes. You know what? I really think of my life as having two significant phases, and there was one moment that really marked the sort of delineation point between the two. And I'll tell you about that. And I'll tell you about my life before that. I graduated from university way back when. It's been a few years now, but after I graduated, I packed up my Volvo station wagon, and the day after my final exam, I drove out west to the mountains, like a lot of young people before me, and ended up in this little Rocky Mountain town called Fernie in British Columbia, just north of the Montana British Columbia border. And it was, at the time, it was just, I had a degree in economics and history, and I didn't really think I wanted to work in that field and didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to defer my decision. I'm just going to move out west and be a ski bum for a winter, and then I'll figure out, quote unquote, real life after that. I actually got fired from my first two jobs. One as a lift operator at the ski resort, and one as the day shift bartender at a real rough and tumble mining bar. And did a little bit of soul searching after that, and thought, geez, I don't know if I'm a very good employee. Evidence doesn't seem to suggest so. And thought, why don't I give entrepreneurship a stab? And kind of thought about things I love to do and opportunities. And Fernie at the time was this small little town that was starting to gain a reputation as a tourist hotspot, and it had a really robust growing ski culture there, and lots of tourists coming in. But in the summer, it was pretty dead, and there's tons of mountain bike trails there built by the locals. Not a lot of tourists yet, but I could see that there were more and more of them coming all the time, and that there was an opportunity to take people out on these trails, because you could go on one trail and get lost within 15 minutes. So I thought, hey, there's an opportunity here, and managed to secure a $10,000 loan from a local sort of community futures organization, it was called, and hung up a shingle and started offering trips. And it was a bit of a rough go at the start, but by year 3, year 4, we were starting to pick up steam. I had a partner back then. I bought him out in year 5. And by about year 9, things were starting to hum along and developing a good reputation. And I basically ran the company from mid-June to mid-September. It was a pretty short season. In the off season, I skied my brains out. I played in a band. I toured all over the world with my band. I was living the life of Riley. And in 2004, I moved to another town, Golden, about 3 hours north. And I started dating a girl who lived there. And this is where the story takes an interesting twist. For probably a couple of years before that, I'd had this sort of vague sense of unease that something wasn't quite right, and I couldn't really put my finger on it. And everything seemed fine. I was living a great life, and a life that other people dreamed about. And a lot of my friends who went straight into office jobs after university just thought I lived the coolest life ever. But something just didn't feel right, and I started seeing this girl. And then Christmas Eve 2004, she broke up with me. She dumped me flat out, said, "It's not working. I think we got to call it quits." And
there's always a girl involved.
There's always a girl involved.
Okay.
I'd been dumped before, and it's never any fun. But this one was different, and I basically crawled back to my bedroom, and I more or less didn't get out of bed for the next month. I got up for bodily functions and to occasionally to get some food, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was a journey that took me about 2 years to recover from. And at the time, I didn't really know what was happening. But looking back at it now, I entered a fairly severe depression at that time, and strangely enough, triggered by this woman that I'd only been seeing for a month. But it's one of those things that triggers are often various things like a divorce or losing a job, or whatever, can trigger depression. I'd never experienced it before, and it was really a different experience for me. I eventually ended up back in Toronto about 6 months later. I'd kind of seen a doctor. He'd prescribed antidepressants. I took them. I stopped taking them. I'd take them again. was kind of on this roller coaster ride, and moved back to Toronto, which is where I grew up, and ended up living in my mom's basement. I was pretty much broke at the time, and there I was. I was 34 at the time, and I was living in my mom's basement. Wasn't really sure if I wanted to keep my business going. It didn't seem very promising at the time, and just kept sinking further and further into this depression. And I kind of tried various things, none of which really worked. And one night, I'd never really had suicidal thoughts up until that point. But one night I woke up, and I woke up shaking, and I was shaking because I just had this intense feeling of dread come over me that I'd never experienced before. And it was this feeling that everything was just so incredibly awful, and that there was going to be no way out of it. And I had this feeling like, if this is what it's going to be like, I can't possibly take this for the rest of my life, let alone the rest of the night. And I was shaking because I thought, boy, oh boy, I might actually have to do something to myself to stop this tonight. And I obviously, I did not want to end my life. I somehow managed to get myself back to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I knew that something had changed, that I was in a different phase, that it wasn't just sort of, I'm depressed and I'm down in the dumps, that this was a much scarier, more dangerous place to be. And that was the catalyst. And that night was sort of the breaking point from my old life. And I started seeking out help wherever I could get it. I went and saw my psychiatrist, and I committed to antidepressant medication just to get out of the absolute worst of it. But I knew that wasn't the solution. So I started seeing a therapist. I started doing group therapy. I started doing yoga, meditating, exercising like a maniac. And it took me another good 6 to 8 months. But by the time I actually came out of it, I felt, you mentioned superheroes. I felt like a superhero. I felt so much stronger. And because of the experience that I'd gone through, felt like I had a completely different outlook on life and an outlook on myself, where I'd gone through this intense period of soul searching, where I was able to empathize with other people's difficulties and really see the world in a new light. And so, this is a long-winded answer to your question, but I guess who I am is very much, at this point in my life, is very much shaped by that time in my life, and in particular by that evening in question. And it's caused me to really examine my purpose for being in the world, how I relate to the people around me, how I treat the people around me, and I guess that's my long and short answer to a very big question.
Yeah. Well, I like this because there are a number of people, when speaking in any arena, they shy away from the concepts of the adversity, the resistance, the struggle. That's kind of how we're refined, that refinement process that makes the entrepreneur you see on TV or on Forbes or in the newspaper, on Yahoo, or wherever you see them, even if it's just a guy doing ads on Facebook, that entrepreneur, that real estate investor, that inventor, that person you see has had many of these things happen in various different ways. And it's only through emergencies do we emerge. And most importantly, find things like you were saying, purpose, relate, learning how to relate to people and be in a genuine relationship. And that's part of what shapes us. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that, so that other people, because I know there's somebody listening who's feeling a number of those emotions in one way, shape, or form about themselves, about their opportunity, or maybe, they just hit a record low on their revenue and like, oh my God, what's really going on? All of those things happen, but there's something I want to back up to. You threw it out there really, really fast. It sounded like you started this business with a $10,000 loan and an idea. That's all I heard. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I mean,
I like it.
The part that's missing from the equation is I convinced a good friend to join in on the journey with me, and he was around for about 5 years. He left to go to chiropractic college, but Yeah, I still have a copy of my first business plan. This was 1996. And it's funny, it's like Comic Sans font, and it looks ridiculous.
Right.
But it's funny to go back and look at that business plan. I just typed up a 5-6 page business plan, put in my application to Community Futures, and said we need 10 grand to get this thing off the ground. And it I wouldn't say we spent that 10 grand wisely, but we certainly learned some lessons along the way, and it was the initial spark that we needed to get going. And it's funny, our first summer, we had a grand total of one client, one customer
Nice.
for a
Nice.
one-day trip. I think it was like $100, something like that.
Woohoo.
Yeah, and so I took him out. Mountain biking for the day in the Fernie area, and he must have thought I was drunk or something, or high, because I had this massive grin on my face the entire day, and I could not believe that somebody was actually paying me to ride my mountain bike, and it felt like the greatest day of my life, and that was all the motivation I needed. I mean, we had spent some of that money to buy a rental bike fleet, and we did okay renting bikes. We didn't really do so well on the tours until about year 3 or 4, but boy, oh boy, was that a good feeling to just get paid doing something you love.
Exactly. I think many people can imagine that. It's like, I cannot believe that people give me money to do this very thing that I would do for free, but oh my God, this is awesome. And we don't realize the value that we can create just in our own joy and the things that we care about. But yet you decided to go through this transition, and that's really what I want to talk about. Okay, so you're on the other side of what I call these inflection points, or these superhero moments, if you will. There's this moment where every superhero goes through. They realize, hey, I have a special gift. Hey, I'm different in some way, shape, or form. Now that I recognize and accept that I am different, I need to go out there. I'm going to choose to go out there and use my differentness in such a way to be able to help other people. What I want to hear is how you came to that decision and deciding to take this new version of you. So we'll call it Mike 2.0, and go out there and do something with it.
Wow. I think the first step for me was to really just get myself as healthy as possible. And, looking back, I can recognize just what was going on inside me prior to that point, and the issues that I was struggling with, and couldn't really put a handle on until they came to a head. But those were all holding me back from success in my professional life, in my business, and and keeping me from achieving the goals I wanted. So for me, the first thing was like deal with all this crap, this emotional baggage, and all this kind of stuff through yoga, through meditation, through therapy. I pretty much did everything I could, and get myself to a point where I really recognized who I was and what my strengths were, and I was able to face my demons, and then that gave me this incredible sense of energy to then, I'd done a whole bunch of soul searching throughout that time, and was thinking, what do I actually want to do with my life? At one point, I applied and got into naturopathic college, and I was going to be a naturopathic doctor, and I did some work as a radio producer, and tried.
Okay, those are not connected, by the way.
No. And but ultimately, I came back to my business and discovered that I actually really loved my business. I really loved being an entrepreneur. I loved travel. I loved mountain biking, and this realization that this company that I sort of built as a hobby and as a kind of just an afterthought, that it really was where I wanted to spend a lot of my time. Whatever we're doing, whether we work at a company or whether we run our own business, we spend the majority of our waking hours doing that. And boy, is it a gift to be able to spend those hours doing something you love? And I realized that I got a lot of joy out of my company, and I provided an incredible amount of joy to our customers. And what a way to spend a life. And so that gave me, that clarity gave me the motivation and the energy to really dive into it. And I started reading every business book I could, and subscribing to all the entrepreneurship magazines, attending events, finding mentors, and just learning everything I could about entrepreneurship and applying that in my business. And then about 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
right around the time my twins were born, I launched kind of a crazy idea. I'm going to launch another business as we're having twins, but I launched.
That's called triplets, by the way.
Yes,
That's because you're having triplets right there.
yeah. I launched a social enterprise incubator. I'd kind of been, casually mentoring a few entrepreneurs on the side, and I decided I wanted to make this, a formal thing. And I developed this incubator where people could apply with their ideas. They did it through a video, and then through a combination of public voting and jury voting, we narrowed that down to 10 finalists. I worked with them for 8 weeks to help them really develop a strong business model, and then they did a Shark Tank style pitch to our jury. We had a big, flashy kind of event with TV cameras and all that kind of stuff. And one winner walked away with $25,000 in startup grant. 3 runners up got $2,500. They got free workspace. I worked with them for a year. And that sort of started me down the path of working with entrepreneurs. And I've been doing consulting and workshops and mentorship and all kinds of stuff over the last 5 years. And I just love it. There's here in Toronto, we have a really exploding entrepreneurship scene. It's not Silicon Valley yet, but boy, is it catching up. And there's just so many people with incredible ideas, and whether it's to have an impact on a local level or a national level or a global level, there's an explosion of energy and enthusiasm and ideas here, and I love being a part of that.
Right. Well, from what I hear, just so you know, I hear that the real estate prices are pretty much the same, so you might as well be Silicon Valley.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I don't know if we've quite caught up to the valley, but we're getting there, that's for sure.
Yep. So now what I absolutely love is how, and I hope everybody hears this. You've heard this from a number of guests before in the past. You start out doing your own thing. As you grow, as you change, you start to want to help other people do their own thing in various different ways. And if you're developing enough systems within your enterprise, you have the time to do it. You actually have the crazy idea of, hey, let's have twins and start a business at the same time because, hey, I've got systems and things in place to be able to make that happen. What I want to talk about, though, is when you've worked with entrepreneurs or even yourself in your own business, generally the thing is, I mean, if you mentioned Shark Tank, the number one thing that I can count on in between Shark Tank, Dragons Den, those shows is you're going to hear, so how many sales do you have? How much is sales? And sales is this. And sales is great. I mean, that's top line. All problems, hear me clearly, entrepreneurs, all problems, every problem you're having in business, they primarily can be solved with more sales. It just cures so many things. But that's not the end of the story. What have you seen in terms of working with entrepreneurs, or maybe even yourself, when it comes to a hyper focus on sales and just how to make your business work?
Yeah, good question. A couple of years ago, I guess it would have been mid 2013, and then I did it again in 2014. I raised a total of about $500,000 from investors to finance a growth plan. And my business had been chugging along nicely for the few years before that, and I was financing everything through cash flow. But I had some grand ambitions, and I knew that if I was trying to finance everything through cash flow, it would take me a while to make those ambitions come true. So I went to investors. I raised about $500,000, and I put my growth plan into place, and hiring people and investing in IT, investing in marketing, that kind of stuff. Not a lot of money by Silicon Valley standards, but to me it felt at the
pocket change.
Yeah. I dropped the $500,000 out of my pocket. Can you pick that up, please?
Yeah, pretty much. Taxi ride tip right there.
Yeah. And so the growth plan was primarily focused on let's really blow up that top line, that sales. And that plan has worked really well. We're about 2 years in to that plan since the first time I raised money, and revenue growth has been great. But recently, about a month ago, started noticing that we were getting into some cash flow issues, that our cash was getting dangerously low. And and since then, even lower. I had thankfully, back in the days when I was flush with cash and things were good, I went to my bank and I managed to negotiate a nice big fat line of credit, just so I could prepare. I knew that, I've been doing it already for 16, 17 years at that point. I knew there was always big ups and downs, and that a down would eventually be coming, and I wanted to prepare for it. So managed to negotiate a nice line of credit. And then, about a month ago, things started getting negative, and then since then, we've gotten into the line of credit, which kind of shocked me because sales have been growing, and I started really digging into it and realizing just how much that focus on sales had forced me to get really sloppy about the bottom line. And I'm pretty religious about metrics and key performance indicators. I have a big fat dashboard, full of all our marketing metrics, our sales metrics, our customer ratings, all that kind of stuff. I don't have financial metrics. I mean, we track our sales, but I don't have my net revenue on there. I look at a profit and loss statement, at the end of our fiscal year, and I realized just how crazy that was. And I started digging into that, looking at our operating expenses, looking at our cost of goods sold, that kind of stuff, and realizing, boy, were we wasting a lot of money, and we hired more people than we actually needed. And so I started looking at all that and finding tremendous opportunities for cutting expenses, cutting our cost of goods sold, and the turnaround has been incredible, just in terms of where we're going to be at this point next year if we maintain the same, even if we just maintain the same sales, let alone keep the pace of growth. It'll be a dramatic turnaround simply because I'm finally paying attention to costs. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs really fall short, is they don't pay enough attention to that bottom line to the cost. They just top line, let's get the sales and that'll fix everything. Well, I can tell you, I'm connected with a lot of entrepreneurs who are going through or have gone through the same experience where they grow themselves broke and they grow themselves out of business.
Right.
You put too much focus on that top line, and your expenses will keep pace, and sometimes they'll keep pace even more. And it's the same on a personal level, right? You get a big raise, and all of a sudden you start spending more, and you get another raise, and you spend even more, and you get a $10,000 raise, and you start spending $12,000 more a year. And so it's really brought home to me the importance of really keeping track of those costs. I've implemented a new structure based on a book I read called Profit First, and I highly recommend it to everybody. But flipping most entrepreneurs, they approach it from a standpoint of they have sales, and then they deduct their expenses, and what's left over is profit. And often that's zero or negative or very little. The Profit First approach, I really love it. It's taking a look at those sales and saying, how much profit do I want to get? Set a target of 10% or whatever. Deduct that from that, and that gives you an expense number. And then work your ass off to make sure you get your expenses down to that level so you can hit that profit target. And pull that money out of your sales and put it in a separate account and keep it there. That's your profit. And I love that approach, and it's something we're going to be implementing at my company. It's something I've already been kind of doing to some extent at home, but just a bit of a different approach to it.
And what I like about this is that a lot of the times, especially as real estate entrepreneurs, and I know a number of you are, not all of you, but I know a number of you are, this is relevant. When you hear words like cost of goods sold or operating expenses and all those types of things, understand it affects you and I just the same way. When you're looking at negotiating your invoices, if you're running large multifamily complexes, look at your service agreements. I promise you, you're probably paying too much for your trash and sewer right now. I'm almost certain of it. Second place is you're looking at your taxes, your property taxes, to be specific. Guys, for those of you that are already members, you know what you need to do in terms of how to challenge and lower those expenses and cutting those costs. Those things are key, and they're definitely there. And you need to know the process and actually make that happen. But yes, sometimes that also means personnel. It's not fun. It's not exciting, but Sometimes that means you have one too many persons in one particular department or on one particular building, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is just part of the business. You got to pay attention to all of those because as real estate entrepreneurs, guys, we can get very swayed by that top line because our top lines are so stinking huge. Because especially if you're doing apartment building, right? The top line looks great all the time. The question is, what do you get to take home and are you paying attention to it? Mike, what I heard recently, one of the best gifts that an entrepreneur can have is running out of money. How do you feel about that? And I'm sure right now you're thinking to yourself, running out of money. Well, I've already got that part covered. I totally understand what I'm really talking about here is, maybe you get your business started and then you run out of money again, or you have cash flow issues. Things go up, they go down, all the way around. One of the greatest things that will ever happen to you on your entrepreneurial journey is to see yourself overcome challenges that you can't even possibly imagine at this particular moment in time. In fact, if you want to pick up some of the challenges and understand some of the ways to overcome those challenges, I'm going to make a suggestion. Grab a copy of my book, Cashflow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. You can send a text message. Keyword is book. Text the word book to 72000 or go to cashflowdiary.com/free book for those of you who are outside of the United States. Otherwise, just go ahead and send a text message. Text book to 72000, and I'm going to share with you some of those ways that I've been able to overcome, deal with, and make it happen anyway, despite all of those odds. If you're feeling like the odds are against you, you're wondering how on earth you're ever going to get started, well, you're the person that I wrote the book for. You know what to do. Go grab a copy. And now let's go find out exactly why running out of money is a gift.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. This experience over the last month or two, I see it. I came to the same thing that I went through personally when I had that big wake up call from the universe. It sort of shifted my attention to where it really should have been. The same thing with my business. This has been a fantastic wake up call for me to think. You really the number one function of your business, it should make money. If you're not focusing on that, and again, we've mentioned it before when we were chatting. Some businesses, I'm thinking of Amazon, Groupon, they can just keep bleeding money forever because investors are going to just keep piling money in. I mean, eventually investors are going to stop, right? And those businesses got to figure out a business model where they're actually making money. You just can't keep losing money forever. The market's not going to support you forever. Number one function of a business, it should make money, because if you want that business to continue, keep providing a livelihood, keep having impact on your customers, that kind of stuff, you got to keep making money and paying those bills. And just going back to what we were talking about, expenses. I started with the low hanging fruit, and there were some big expenses that I could cut. Like, I had 2 full-time developers doing IT projects for me, and I had this big wish list, and I was paying them. I was outsourcing them from India and getting a great deal, but I was still paying them, I think, about $53,000 a year collectively. And I realized, and I've been doing that for 2 years. And I realized, I've got this big, crazy laundry list of projects, and really, I don't need half of this stuff. So I just went to one developer half-time, and boom, cut $40,000 off of my payroll right there. And there were some big ones like that. But then I started diving into the little ones and started looking at my income statement line by line. And I use QuickBooks online, so it spits out the report, and then I can click on any of those line items, and I can see all the things that make up that item. So I click on telephone, and I look at, we spent $1,000 last year on long distance. That's crazy. We don't really do that much calling, and our incoming calls are free with the package.
Right.
And I realized, we work out of a co-working space here, and we were just using the phones here, and we were paying these outrageous rates. And so I signed us up for an online phone system. It just gives us a number and a code that we punch in, and then we dial the number. And now we've gone from $80 a month down to less than $5 a month.
Yeah.
it's not a huge thing, but you take a bunch of those little ones together, that's all bottom line. That goes right to the bottom line. I mean, we're talking, the stuff that I've done just on operating expenses, $250,000 turnaround. And some of those
Nice.
are big and some of those are small. But that's money that's, going to end up back in my pocket.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now,
Taxes, of course.
well, shh, don't tell them that. Now, and I'm also assuming that you probably discovered a couple of areas of opportunity that are, hey, I didn't know this particular product line or this particular service was doing so well.
Yeah, well, for me being in the travel business, we operate about 40 different trips, and those are we have three different business models. We have trips that we operate ourselves. We have trips that we run through local subcontractors, and we have trips that are run through a franchise program. And so all of those they have different margins. I started diving into each of them and looking at where the margins, and some of them there was a huge opportunity to really increase our margins, lower the cost of the trip, raise the price of the trip, all kinds of things we could do there. But realize that, some trips we had just fantastic margins on. We certain trips we run, we get like 50, 60% margins on. And then there's other ones we're only getting, maybe 10%. And realizing, boy, we've got a massive opportunity there. Like, these are the trips we really should be promoting. We should hit people over the head with these and saying, hey, check out our Peru trip or our Guatemala trip or something like that. And obviously our number one goal is to get people on the right trip for them. But after that, there's a few options, and we want to steer them to those high margin ones. And same, if you're in the real estate game, you might have some properties where you're earning some fantastic margins, and try to find some more properties like that, or, and really understand your numbers on a property by property level. Right?
Absolutely. You are speaking my language. That is the language of cash flow, of course. And this is the work that goes into making sure that the portfolio works, the business works. And I hope you guys are gaining a lot and gleaning a lot and taking notes. And if you felt the need to pull over to the side of the road, that was an appropriate feeling, because what you are hearing is the insides, the inner workings. This is how you make sure that you stay in business for a number of years, and that you just don't do deals on the side. So what I do want to hear about, though, is this newest project that I know that you've got going on, because I think there's going to be a number of individuals who are listening that probably would be interested to know about the opportunities that you're helping make happen.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I've been working with entrepreneurs for a number of years now. I've done dozens, maybe hundreds of workshops. Every workshop that I ever do with entrepreneurs, I like to keep the focus on action as opposed to theory. And I want people to walk away knowing, if they're looking to start a business, or if they have a business, they're going to walk away knowing exactly how to apply what I'm talking about to their business. And in most cases, we will do that. We will do that action stuff right in class.
Nice. Hold on. I'm getting all kinds of goosebumps over here. I know the kids are in the background. I'm sure you're on the treadmill. I'm sure you're probably washing dishes. I don't stop. I want you to hear what the focus was. Okay? Say that again, Mike, because that is everything.
The focus is 100% squarely on action. So actions you can do right away on your business, your idea, whatever it is that you want to bring to the world. And, that was born out of, I'd attended a lot of entrepreneurship events. You get these speakers up there, they're running $20 million, $100 million companies, and they kind of blather on, what they did, and you scribble to take notes. And then at the end of the night, you kind of thinking, well, that was kind of neat. It was inspiring, but boy, I have no idea how to apply this to my business right now. And I wanted to address that need, and what people were really looking for is they wanted to know, what are the concrete steps I can take? I love what you're saying. How can I apply that to my own business? And so every workshop I ran, I would, whether it's, marketing workshop or talking about developing your business model, it's, maybe a third of the time is me talking, and the rest of the time is, hey, let's stop. Let's apply this to your idea, your business right now. And so I developed a lot of these handouts. Probably about 250, 300 pages of handouts collectively for these workshops. And my first thought was, I'm gonna make a book out of this. And then I realized, number one, a lot of the content was very stuff that updates very frequently.
Right.
How to run online advertising campaigns, or stuff like that. And boy, oh boy, would that book ever get stale fast. And number two, you start looking into the economics of the book publishing model. They're not very good for.
Just so everybody knows, that's code for you don't write a book to make money. That's what he's trying to say.
Exactly. Uh, it's a good calling card. It's great for credibility, but not, unless you're on the New York Times list, you're not making any money out of that. And so I realized a better format for this would be to put it into an online course where people could follow along at their pace. It's all in one. It's all in one place. They can track their progress online, all that kind of stuff. And I thought, oh, it's just a simple matter. I'll just slap this stuff online. And I started going through the content, and I realized some of this content is a little out of date. I need to update it. I need to add other content. I need to take some out. So it wasn't quite as easy as I thought. And it's been about 10, 11 months in the making. That has been completely on the side, from running my business. I have a morning routine where I get up at 5 and I do some yoga, I meditate, I do a little bit of workout, and then I set aside 30 to 60 minutes every morning for working on a side project. And this has kind of been the main focus of this online course has been pretty much used up most of those 30, 60 minutes for the last 11 months. But I guess that's another thing, that I wanted to. People always talk about, oh, I want to write a book, or I want to do a movie. I have no time. Well, it doesn't, you don't have to have a lot of time. Set aside 30 minutes every day. Most people can find 30 minutes in a day, whether it's in the morning or in the evening or during the day. If you're doing 30 minutes a day regularly, you could write a 600-page book in a year or 2 years. And, it may take you 2 years, may take you 3 years, but it'll get done, and
Right.
it'll actually be done by the time you're there. So anyway, so I got all the content up there, and I've been beta testing it for the last 2 months. And this week it's actually launching, and I'm super proud of it. The content is amazing. I've been working with this guy to develop the infrastructure for it. So it's got all these different modules and chapters, and you can track your progress as you read and go through the chapters. And more importantly, there's all kinds of tools and resources you can download. And every module has a sidebar with action items, and it tells you exactly what you need to do to apply it to your business. And as you do it, you check it off and you watch that progress meter go, and it's really fun, and you can see how you're progressing along. So that's I think I'm proud of the setup of it, and I think I think entrepreneurs are going to love it.
I agree. I mean, I'm down for anything that promotes action as opposed to theory. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a time to understand and learn what it is and learn about something. But I'm a firm believer that you don't know something until you've done it. You can know about many things, but you don't know it until it's part of you. And there's only one way to make it part of you. And just studying about it that's just not going to be it. I mean, I'm sure up to this point, Mike, you probably thought you understood business and cash flow until the last couple of months. You're like, now you understand it at a completely new level. Would I be correct in that?
Absolutely. The level, I always thought I was, pretty good with numbers, but the last month or two, I've really tried to give myself an MBA in business financials. Really, I knew how to read a profit and loss statement, and I knew how to run a balance sheet and do a cash flow. But the level that I've been diving into lately, through books, through talking to friends, CMAs and that kind of stuff, really understanding how do you analyze those numbers, because it's one thing to look at, a balance sheet or profit and loss statement, but it's another thing to know how to analyze those numbers, because what that is, it's a clue to tell you what you need to think about and what you need to worry about and what you need to focus on and what's doing great. And that's sort of next level type stuff. And boy, it's been, I've taken a lot of joy actually out of really being able to learn this stuff and dive into it and really understand how my company operates and where it makes the profit and where it's losing money. And it's something that every entrepreneur, whether you're a real estate entrepreneur or business entrepreneur, you really got to understand those numbers. And it's not rocket science. You could get a book like Profit First, or take an evening course for 6 weeks, and just don't offload that onto somebody else, because they're not going to know your business better than you do.
Right.
And I'd always, up until this point, I'd always thought, well, I want to focus my time as an entrepreneur where I provide the most value for my business. So I'm going to outsource the bookkeeping and the receipt keeping and all that kind of stuff. And I realized, that might work for some businesses, but mine is a fairly complex business, and I have dozens, maybe hundreds of suppliers from around the world, and I have 3 different currencies that I operate in, and all kinds of different rates for subcontractors, guides, all that kind of stuff. That's really hard for somebody outside to understand. And so I took back the bookkeeping from, I had a bookkeeping assistant and a bookkeeper. I took that back from that. I always thought it was, boy, that's just going to eat up too much of my time. It's about 2-3 hours a week for me. And I get to go through every expense, every bit, every dollar coming in, dollar going out. I get to see that, and I know exactly how that fits into the overall business. And I know whether that's a legitimate expense or something that we should get rid of. And boy, oh boy, it's been eye-opening.
No doubt, no doubt. And if you are out there wondering, how would this apply to, my real estate? This is the difference between understanding that you're paying a set cost. You have a certain amount of fixed cost for every roof, for every door. And this is why, you may think that 1 bedroom is wonderful to have, but you may want the 2-bedroom or the 3-bedroom. And this is why we've often trained many of the members to focus on revenue per square foot, income per square foot, expenses per square foot, because that's the only way you're going to be able to figure out where that profit lies. Do I need more 2-bedrooms, more 3-bedrooms? Do I want studios? Who's the customer that's really willing to pay the dollars in order to make the business sing and work? So, Mike, with all of this that you've talked about, the ups and the downs, and at the end of the day, there's a question that I've got to ask. Has it been worth it?
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't imagine any other way of being. I love. The thing is, as entrepreneurs, is we get to create something every day, and we get to bring our ideas to life, and that's not an opportunity that's afforded to everyone. And I've managed to get my business to the point where, cash flow issues aside, recently we're going to get through that. But I've gotten it to the point where it's quite stable and operates well without me. I probably put in about 30 hours a week, my business. Even back when I was, doing 60, 70-hour weeks, the feeling of just, working on something that you've created yourself, mm-hmm. and the flexibility that comes with that, where I can say, you know what, I'm not going to work today. I'm going to do something else. I need a little refresher. I'm just going to go and run around in the park and play with balloons or whatever, or play with my kids. Or it's that freedom and that ability to create something every day and bring new ideas to life. It's something irreplaceable, and I don't think I could ever go back. I mean, I've only ever had truly one sort of corporate job in my life, and that's when I was a producer for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and it was a great job. I really enjoyed what I was doing, but I was working for somebody else, and it just didn't feel right, and it didn't resonate with me. And I will continue to be an entrepreneur for the rest of my days.
Right. It's like, no matter the struggle, no matter what it costs, there's something about it that still makes it worth it at the end of the day. So I'm sure that, many have listened this far. Maybe they're like, hey, I want to do a mountain bike tour. Maybe they just want to find out more about what you have going on, and they've got an idea that you might be able to help them with. What's going to be the best way for anyone listening right now to be able to catch up with you after they're done listening today?
Well, my website, it's Mike Brcic, BRCIC.com, MikeBRCIC.com. And that's kind of my own personal website where I have all the things that I do, my company, the charity that I run, my online course, consulting, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I have a whole bunch of different websites, but they're all linked to from that one spot. And I don't always do the best job of updating it, but it's generally pretty. It's pretty up to date. It's not like it's not like I've got a blog post there from 2012 sitting there. It's usually about a month, current to at least a month. So
that's good. That's good. Now, I have a final question for you, if you will. There's probably a person or two listening, and I'm sure you've dealt with them as well in all of the incubator clients and things that you've helped over the time. There's a person listening right now who they're thinking about becoming this superhero for the first time, or maybe again. Maybe they took a few hits and they're like, okay, I'm gonna put my hat back in the ring, or maybe they're like, I'm really gonna step forward this time and make it happen. I am tired of this idea bugging me. I am pregnant with ideas. It's time to give birth. However, in the back of their head, Mike, they got that voice. And I know you are intimately familiar with that voice that always comes up just before you're about to have that breakthrough, just before you go out there to become and step into the greatness that you were born to be. That voice that often, too many times, we listen to and shrink back and gives us the reasons why it won't work, why it can't happen, how we're not qualified. What I would love to hear from you is, what would you say to a person who's hearing that voice right now?
Jay, you're full of great questions. I love it. And that's a great final question. I have spent a lot of my life dealing with and managing fear and overcoming it. When I lived out in the Rockies, I would, on a daily or weekly basis, I would scare the crap out of myself. Whether it's whether it's jumping off a cliff on my skis or getting caught in an avalanche or going down a crazy trail on my bike. I've always been a bit of a thrill seeker, but regardless of whether you're conservative or thrill seeker, there's always a line. There's always a line, and when you cross that, when you're up against that line, you're scared. You're scared, and that fear is telling you to stop what you're doing. Sometimes that, when there's been times when I've gone over cliffs I shouldn't have, and I should have listened to the voice. But I've tried to learn from that sort of physical approach and that sporting approach, and apply that to the rest of my life, and use those lessons in overcoming fear in the rest of my life. And for me, whenever I'm thinking of embarking on something new, typically when I hear that voice of fear, that voice of quote unquote reason telling me, what do you think you're doing? My God. Often I take that as a clue and a sign that this is the right way forward, because that's kind of a natural self mechanism. It's funny how, as humans, whenever we're contemplating and on the verge of doing something great, that's when the fear kicks in the most. And I take that as now I've gotten to the point where I take that as a sign. Boy, this is the way forward. You have to break through that fear and charge through it. And one of the ways in the classes that I teach, I try to get my students comfortable with fear, with dealing with fear and managing it, and I give them little fear challenges. Tim Ferriss does a good job of in his book. I think it's 4 Hour Body, or maybe it's 4 Hour Work Week. He has all these little fear challenges. But I do things like I tell them, I want you to for next week, I want you to get the phone number of an attractive member of the opposite sex, the same sex, whatever gender they're interested in, and I want you to walk up to a stranger and get that phone number. And it's funny, the reactions I get from students. They're like, "Oh my God, I was completely terrified, but I wanted to do it, and I did it." And boy, oh boy, in some cases it's hilarious the reactions they get, but in some cases they're just like, they're blown away that something that they never would have done before, they're able to do it, and they're able to apply that to to the rest of their life. So figure out what's a small thing I could do that scares me, but that I could do today, and then up the ante a little bit each day or each week or something. Give yourself little challenges, and that's going to help you tackle those big things, the big life things, the big dreams, goals.
Nice. I love it I love it. I love it. I love it. So, and for those of you if you're at the gym right now, feel free to take on that challenge that he just mentioned, because you're probably surrounded by someone that would fit the bill. So go talk to them. I'm sure it'll be fun. Now, I also want to say, Mike, I definitely appreciate everything that you've shared today and the amount of information that you've been able to bring in such a short period of time. And just thank you very much for taking the time to share your thoughts and ideas here with us at the Cashflow Diary.
Well, thank you as well, Jay. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? Well, at minimum, it probably means you should pick up a book called Profit First and figure that thing out. And more importantly, just understand, stuff happens when you're in business. You could grow yourself broke. I thought that was pretty funny. And if we've learned nothing else today, that it's okay if you realize that today that you are a bad employee. Just go outside and play with some balloons. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.